As I heard 50% of the men watch porn. I'm not asking you whether that's true or not. Leo, I know you have a couple of boys, and while they were growing up, did you use parental control software? I am 70, and my 9 grandchildren are always on my iPhone, iPad, desktop, laptop, and just to be safe, I would like to put some type of parental controls on the devices. So my kids are still growing up. I have never really used parental control software. I have never really believed it to work.
So the answer is yes, they are watching porn.
They are. The answer is yes. Every kid, like...
It's kind of hard.
You will see it.
Let me put it this way, Grandpa.
And you mean that in the kindest way, because he is a grandfather.
Even if... Well, first of all, I'm going to tell him how he can protect his kids on his phone. Because he doesn't want to let them do that. But they will see it somewhere else. They'll go to a friend's house. They'll borrow it. They'll see it at school. They're going to see it. It's unfortunately, but that's... I mean, it's not... The porn doesn't bother me as much as some of the horrific other things that are on the internet, like this recent mass killing at Christchurch. And that video was posted... People reposted it millions of times on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah.
So that, to me, would be more horrific for a teenager to see.
Right.
But there are ways you can protect yourself and your kids.
So I would say, first of all, talk to your kids about it. I know it's uncomfortable, but like I've definitely embarrassed my children.
Maybe that's for mom and dad, not grandpa to do.
Right, right. Well, yeah, talk to your kids about how they want their kids.
To their kids.
Like your kids, I'm worried about this.
Here's something that we always said. If you see anything that makes you uncomfortable on the internet, tell us and we'll talk about it. It's okay, but we could talk about it. And you might even say, have you seen anything that makes you uncomfortable? And, and they might say, yeah, I saw Grandpa.
So I have always said that to my kids, and they've never come to me. They have come to me just in like weird moments where they're like, oh, I saw this. Like, who is the YouTuber? There's some YouTuber that is really conservative that like they'll be shown those kinds of things, and now they're old enough to understand that it's. I
am with our correspondent. I mean, it makes me sad, Len, that kids today, they're growing up in a very different world, but the fact is that's the world they're growing up in.
Yeah. So I was going to recommend, first of all, to go to your screen time settings on all your devices, on your iOS devices. Because that is not completely obvious that screen time would be where the parental controls are. So go to screen time and then go to content and privacy restrictions. And then you put on content and privacy restrictions. And maybe you do this every time you hand over the iPad to them. When then you can decide, iTunes App Store purchases probably don't want them to purchase anything. So you can say, not allow in-app purchases. That you didn't say you're worried about that, but always require a password. That's a good idea.
Can you block adult content?
Yeah, content restrictions.
Nice.
So this is for the store or for music, podcasts, and news. You can change it to
you can't keep them for searching for adult content.
You
can't keep adult websites.
Web content, allowed websites only. Limit adult websites. You can do that.
Nice.
It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And first of all, like if you're really serious about them not seeing stuff, like that means no YouTube. And I know that is.
There's no porno on YouTube, but there's stuff that's not great.
Yes. I mean, you're saying anything can be on YouTube before they find it. Before the censors find it. Yes,
I've looked and looked, and I've never found.
Okay, you're right. I've never looked for it, so we differ on that end. But they couldn't keep that video of the mass shooting off there. There's if you get there at the right moment, you probably just were there 5 minutes too late, Leo. But you could probably, people are uploading it.
So now he also mentioned he has some other devices, including Windows machines. Mm-hmm. So the easiest way to do this is not to do it on the phone. Because frankly, the first thing kids are going to do is say, well, let's change Grandpa's settings. Mm-hmm. You can lock them out. You can make it password protected, but that's a lot of complication, and it doesn't protect them on the other devices. So a lot of us use, and I do this, by the way, protection software that's either on the router or you can go out and buy a device. Disney makes probably the best device out there. It's called Circle. Now, many Netgear routers have Circle built in, but if you don't have a router that supports Circle, you can buy a little Circle device. You can also, if you have an Eero router, our sponsor Eero, some of the other mesh routers, they have adult content protection as well. And the nice thing about that is when it happens at the router, it kind of blocks it for all the devices. Grandpa, if you don't want to see it, it'll block it for you as well. These are all, though, in every case, subscription tools. Circle, I can't remember what it is, but it's, $20 or $30, maybe a year, something like that. Plume and Eero both have plus features that you pay around $100 a year for, and those include adult filters, content filters. Look in your router. Your router may have content filters. That's a great way to do it. There's a service also that is free, but is a little bit more complicated to set up depending on how geeky you are, Grandpa, called OpenDNS. And I use this with my kids for years. A lot of schools use it as well, but it does require changing your DNS settings in your router, so it's a little bit more complicated. If you have an Eero, if you have a Plume, if you have a Netgear router, it's just a flip of a switch. If you buy the Disney Circle, it's just a simple thing to install. It's not nearly as complicated. But I do think that OpenDNS has something called the Family Shield that's pretty good, and they have a free version that you can set up. But it does require, as you can see, a little bit of getting in there and getting in the guts of your router. The nice thing about doing it on the router is it kind of does it for all the devices. So if the kid comes in with his own phone, it'll block it automatically. You don't have to change the settings on the phone. So the iPhone does have those settings. Android phones have those settings. Windows might. I don't remember.
Yes, Windows Safety. They have had
some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to go through every device and set it up, or you can do something on the router side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're serious about it, I would suggest starting with screen time on your iPad and iPhone, and then go to allowed websites only. And then they have to talk to you every time they want,
That's the other way to do it, which is to whitelist sites.
Right.
To say, so there's blacklist where you say, don't this site, but that's never complete because there's always new sites.
Right.
Whitelisting says you only can go to these sites.
And it is hard, and it takes a lot, and kids get frustrated, but it makes for a good conversation, I think. And I know a lot of people in the chat room are saying that they filter YouTube, they filter skin algorithmically. Which is just a funny sentence to say, and I get that.
Even
but
YouTube Kids, which is kind of curated for kids, occasionally gets content in there. It's not pornographic content, but highly inappropriate content, including recently, one mother discovered suicide instructions in some YouTube Kid videos.
Well,
and that is, to me, it's much more problematic than, some lovemaking.
And there's also the other thing that happened recently was that on kids' videos, pedophiles were putting comments into the time when it was, so the other thing you need to do is what kind of content are they creating with your devices as well? Because it would be like three, teenage girls just talking, and then one showed a little bit of skin and they would point to that exact moment. So it is complicated.
But don't worry about Momo. That's not a thing.
Well, see, that's what makes it so complicated, because you hear something like that, and then there's this scare of Momo is a bird lady trying to tell all your children to commit suicide.
It's made up.
It's made up, but then there are things out there that are weird and bizarre and weirder than Momo, just like the kind of Elsa and Batman, doing some weird stuff together, and that is...
The sad thing is, Lennon, you and I are of a similar generation, is the world has really changed in many ways for the better. And one of the things that's changed is the internet has brought the outside world into our homes. Mm-hmm. And as a result, there's a lot of great things, but there's a few not so great things. Humans aren't the greatest in some respects. And that's also being brought into your home. You could try to fight it, but I agree with Megan. The best thing to do is to have those conversations with your kids. And I think most kids want to avoid that and won't be seeking it out. If you make it forbidden fruit, sometimes that has the opposite effect.
Well, they probably will seek it out because they're curious, and that's totally normal. It's totally normal to want to seek out that kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah.
And to make sure.
I worry about kids today, but.
Well, I'm just grateful that I have teenagers who I didn't have the option of handing over an iPad with YouTube on it.
Len, our parents were worried that rock and roll was going to turn us into.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. It's just.
Maybe it did. I don't know.
Well, you, for
Me,
sure.
For sure.
I hear you, Len, and I love that you care about that. My children are currently with my parents right now, probably watching this show and learning all kinds of new things from that. All right, I have one more question.